Notes for this class you can find at theregathering.com/page/PFT Hebrew 1. You have to have a regathering.com account to access those. The account is free. You can also find past classes on YouTube. The link is impossible to spell, but just visit the Passion for Truth video channel on YouTube and you'll find, just scroll through there and you'll find links to past classes. This is week 4, beginning Hebrew. So, we'll jump right in. So far we have covered Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet, and Yod. And we've also covered several vowel sounds, the komets, the cholam, which can also be written with a vav, the shuruk, and the patach. Okay. Is there anything, any questions anybody had about any of these letters or vowel sounds? Okay. All right. Well, that's a good sign that probably people online understand it too then.
One of the vowels you said was a short O.
The komets in Ashkenazic Hebrew, yes, can be pronounced as a short O. In the Sephardic that we are learning, it's pronounced as a short A. So, it's pronounced identically to the patach in Sephardic. Okay? So, unfortunately, we have two vowels that make the same sound in this dialect, but...
The short A is more of an AH, not an A like cat.
Right, it is ah, as in wall. Yeah, Hebrew has no a, like cat. Okay, it has short A and it also has a long A. It has ah and a, but it does not have a. So, something to be aware of. Although if you say a, people probably won't be confused what you're talking about. But that is not technically a sound that is made in the Hebrew language. Okay? All right, so we are on to our 11th letter. That is Kaf. Okay. The Kaf looks very similar to a Beit. But of course, you'll notice that the Beit has the tail in the lower right. Like the Beit, the Kaf can make two different sounds. So there's a Kaf with a dagesh and a Kaf without a dagesh. With a dagesh, the Kaf makes the sound of the letter K. Without the dagesh, the Kaf makes the same sound as the Chet, okay, which you can write KH or CH. Cha. Okay, so there's Kaf and Chaf, as it were, but they are the same letter, just like Beit, and without the dagesh you could call it a Veit, but it is in fact the same letter, just with or without a dagesh.
So, reading in a language or a script that doesn't use any dots.
Yes, if you're reading a script that for some reason excludes the dagesh, it's still called a Beit and a Kaf. Okay, then you just have to mentally insert the dagesh. I encourage you to read scripts that include them. It makes it much easier. Yes, I definitely encourage you to focus on scripts that include dageshes and include vowel pointings. It's a great aid to learning the language. Once you know the language really well, you can kind of work your way through unpointed scripts, but it's difficult for me to do that. So, okay, so the Kaf makes two sounds, hard K. Well, there's only one kind of K, but hard C or K, and Cha. The kaf also has a special form, which looks like this. Okay? This is called a final kaf. Okay, this form is always pronounced ch, and this form always appears at the end of a word. Okay, so in any word that ends in a kaf, the kaf will be written like this. All right, it's exactly the same as a regular kaf. It just looks different when it's written at the end of a word.
So it's a K kaf, not a K.
It's always a ch. It's always, yes, because it will never have a dagesh. Okay? There are 5 letters in Hebrew that have final forms. Okay, they are written differently at the end of a word than they are at the beginning or in the middle of a word. They behave the same as the regular letter. They're considered the same as the regular letter. They just are written differently.
So different, I guess it would be a different dialect. Would consider that just a K sound and not a cat sound?
No, all the dialects consider this the same. In all the dialects, this is a ch sound. Okay, and all the dialects have final letters. Okay. How final letters came to be is they actually started arising in Paleo-Hebrew. A lot of scripts in Paleo-Hebrew are not written as neatly as scripts in the modern, using the modern letters. In fact, if you see some of them, the letters aren't all the same size and they're not necessarily in straight lines, and sometimes it's hard to tell where one word ends and another one begins. They did put, there's this story going around that originally Hebrew was written without spaces between the words. I've yet to see a script that actually does that, but I have seen scripts where sometimes they kind of jumble things together, but there definitely is an attempt to put spaces between words. There are many words that end in certain letters, and so those letters came to have final forms so that you always knew this is ending the word. And it carried over into the modern script, even though it's probably not really necessary in the modern script. However, it does draw attention to certain endings, and when we get into, in intermediate Hebrew, when we get into grammar and learning about suffixes that you will add to words, it makes a lot of sense why they draw attention to these particular letters, because they're used as suffixes very frequently. Okay, so it just kind of, it's a little confusing for learning the alphabet, but it does draw attention to the way the word is going to be parsed out later. Okay, so there are 5 words with final forms. The kaf is the first one of them, so it has this final kaf. And you'll notice that the bottom of this letter extends below the line that you would normally write in. So this is a regular kaf next to a final kaf. Okay, it extends, the tail down here extends below the line.
This is different from, I've heard like Sophie.
Yes, sofit is another, kaf sofit is another way of saying final kaf, sofit being the Hebrew word for final. Okay, yes, you can also call this kaf sofit, but I'm calling it final kaf just to be more English about it. But yes, you can also call it kaf sofit. Okay, any other questions about kaf and final kaf, or kaf and chaf? All right. Okay, kaf is the 11th letter. Its numerical value is 20. Aleph is 1, Beit 2, all the way up to Yod, which is 10. And then when we get up to 11, we just start jumping by tens. So kaf is 20 after Yod being 10. Okay? In Paleo-Hebrew, kaf looks something like this. And the Hebrew word kaf means the palm of the hand. That's what that is meant to represent. Flip it 180 degrees, and you wind up with a Greek kappa. Of course, on down to our modern K. All right. So that is the Kaf. Our next letter is the Lamed. Lamed makes the sound of the letter L. The Lamed, you'll notice, sticks up here, so next to, say, a Kaf, the top of the Lamed extends above the line. It's in fact the only letter that will extend above the normal line of writing. And you'll see it, sometimes you'll see it like this, sometimes you'll see it like this. It's always a Lamed. There's no real, there's no difference in pronunciation between any of those forms. It's just a matter of how you wish to write it. Okay. Numerical value of Lamed is 30. And in Paleo-Hebrew, the Lamed looks something like this, although you'll see it flipped around in all kinds of different formations. What it represents is a shepherd's crook, shepherd's staff. And the Hebrew verb lamad means to learn or to teach. So it's kind of the idea of teaching the sheep by guiding them in the right direction. Lamed became the Greek lambda, and eventually what we know as the L. Okay. Any questions about the Lamed?
So the Greeks have a different method of rounding out their sheep?
Yeah, I don't know that there's a pictorial meaning behind the Greek letters. I kind of doubt that there is. I think a number of them obviously came directly from the Semitic languages, but I don't know that the symbolism was preserved along with the shape, because Greek culture is a little different than Middle Eastern culture, or Middle Eastern nomadic culture. Greeks were, in essence, Middle Eastern. But, okay, so that's the Lamed. And we're going to get to some words that use these so you can kind of see them in action, but I need to cover all the letters that those words consist of first. All right, so our next letter is the Mem. Mem makes the sound of the letter M. Numerical value is 40. Okay, and the Mem has a final form as well. The regular form, I kind of exaggerate how much of a triangle it is. A lot of times this top edge looks a little more rounded in many scripts. But I exaggerate that in order to differentiate it from the final Mem. Which basically looks like a square. It does have this little tail coming off the side here, but how large that tail is, again, depends on the font that you are reading. So, regular Mem, and Mem if it's at the end of a word. In Paleo-Hebrew, mem looks something like that. The Hebrew word mayim, which we're going to learn here in a minute, means water, and this is representing a river or a flowing water. It's easy to see how that became the Greek mu and Latin m. Okay. Any questions about the mem or the final mem? All right. Okay, we have a couple vowels to go over. First vowel is the chirik, which you will see spelled in various ways. The chirik appears below. This box with an X just represents any Hebrew letter. The chirik appears below the letter, okay, as opposed to the cholam, which appears above and to the left. Okay, the chirik is a single dot placed directly below the letter. The chirik makes the sound of short I. So I as in bit or rib. Okay, that I sound. And using the chirik, if we have a mem with a patach, a yod with a chirik, and then a final mem. First we pronounce the mem, the short a of the patach, the y of the yod, the short I of the chirik, and finally the m of the final mem. And we're left with mayim. And mayim means water. Mayim is the origin of the name of the letter mem. So when you think of the letter mem, think of mayim. Mayim is a word you will encounter countless times in the scriptures and in your everyday life if you speak Hebrew in regular life. So this is a word, and this is also a great word for remembering your regular mem and your final mem because it includes both. So as you practice writing, write this word and get used to writing your regular mem and your final mem. You'll also hear the regular and final mem called the open and closed mem. I prefer to call them just mem and final mem because that refers to their function. But by open and closed, they mean this one has a little gap right here, and this one, of course, has no, it's closed. It has no gaps. Okay, so any questions about the chirik? All right. Our other vowel for today is 3 dots in this upside down pyramid. These are also written below the letter. This vowel is called a segol, and it makes the sound of short E or eh. This is the E in, say, bet. Okay, and segol appears in a lot of fun words. And a lot of times it will appear in pairs. So, this is a kaf with the dagesh, a lamed, and a beit with no dagesh. Okay? So, We get our K from the Kaf, short E from the Segel, L from the Lamed, short E from the next Segel. Beit with no Dagesh is a V. So this is pronounced Kelev. Kelev. Kelev means a dog. And Kelev is the origin of the name Caleb. So that's in fact what his name means, is dog. It just seems a little unusual since dogs are not highly regarded in Israelite culture. Some people think it might be attesting to loyalty or something of that nature.
Maybe it morphed in the renewed covenant.
Perhaps.
Because it's definitely not good in the renewed covenant.
Right. Well, yeah, it's not... I don't know. If you look at the names of some of some of the Hebrew names and you see what they mean, my wife says this all the time. Why would you name your child that? Like Nabal, the former husband of Abigail, who became David's wife. His name means fool. Like, why would you name your child that? Why? What was his mom thinking? But
She wasn't.
perhaps the meanings of certain names, though, don't necessarily reflect on the child, but on some sort of circumstance surrounding the time of birth. So like the name
She
Ichabod,
was a fool. She felt like a fool because she had.
it could be, or like the name Ichabod is actually Ichavod, which means there is no glory. And that's the name that was given to a child that was born at the time that the Ark of the Covenant was stolen by the Philistines. So
They wrote Ichabod across.
his name is basically a commemoration of that event. It doesn't mean that the child has no glory, or that she's wishing that there's never any glory on this child.
I
It's
was told him that the glory has departed.
right.
Either way.
Yes.
Okay, well, we're thinking of these things in our culture.
Right.
Now, as far as Eastern, what I'm understanding, like with Asians, you're known by what your parents do.
hmm
So, is there some type of tie-in with that?
I don't know if that's necessarily why they're willing to name their kids things that don't sound so pleasant. But yeah, the term, son of so-and-so, it's kind of like our surname now.
I just wonder how much, as far as culture, is it like a collaboration where, like mom and dad get to make the choice? Is it that there's a whole more than just mom and dad who get to make the choice of who's the name of this?
I don't know enough about the culture to know. I know biblically the pattern seems to be that the mother names the child.
Okay.
Although there are cases, of course, of the father naming the child, like with John the Baptist. His father gave him his name, and Jacob gave Benjamin his name because Rachel originally gave him a name that meant basically son of my affliction, because she was in a lot of affliction while she was giving birth and eventually died from the birth experience. But Jacob changed his name to Benjamin, which means son of the right hand, which is so apparently Jacob didn't like the idea of giving a child a name that had a negative connotation, but other people did. And this isn't necessarily a negative connotation. I just don't understand how it's a positive one entirely, because dogs weren't really common pets in ancient Israel, although I'm sure there were some domestic dogs.
If it was a wild dog, it might have been something to do with being the scout.
Right. Yeah, it could have been prophetic that, he was going to go out and scout the land or something like that. Who knows? Whatever the case, this is the origin of his name, and Kelev does mean dog. So, okay. All right, another word involving the segel is a lamed, chet, final mem, segel under the lamed, and segel under the chet. Okay, so elf of the lamed, short E of the segol, the ch of the chet, short E of the segol underneath the chet, and then the M of the final mem. Lechem, pronunciation of this word. And a lot of you are probably familiar with lechem. Lechem means bread. Or sometimes used to mean food in general, not necessarily, bread specifically. Lechem is part of the phrase Beit Lechem, or Bethlehem, okay, the city, and it literally means house of bread. Yes, indeed, where the bread of life would be born.
Yeah, when he says, "Man does not eat by bread alone, but by every mouth that proceeds out of the mouth." Came to my mind.
Yep. Yeah, bread was a very common staple in ancient Israel. Definitely had bread with dinner. And to this day, there's bread in a lot of things. All right, so kelev, lechem, and now we get to use the final chaf in this word, mem, lamed, final chaf, with a segol under the mem and a segol under the lamed. Okay, so this is pronounced M for the mem, short E for the segol, L for the lamed, short E for the segol under the lamed, and ch for the chaf. So melech, and melech is a king. Okay. Yes, that is, yes, Melchizedek does in fact, it's two words, okay, Melech is king, and Tzedek is righteousness. So Melchizedek literally means king of righteousness, or righteous king.
That's a different form of it, Malki.
Yes, it is in fact Malchi, it's not Melech Tzedek, it's Malchi. That is how it's pronounced. Yeah, the King James did not get it wrong. They literally transliterated it. But yeah, it does come from melech. That's the root word. So, all right.
What did you say Rachel named
Benjamin's name at first was Ben-Oni.
Ben-Oni?
Yes. I can't think offhand the chapter in Genesis where his birth is recorded, but yeah, you'll find it in that verse there. That she called him Ben-Oni, but Jacob called him Benjamin or Benjamin. All right, so any questions about these words, about the segol, about normal and final letters? Okay. Okay, well, I'll do a quick review of some of the words that we've learned and just kind of see if they're sinking in and kind of repeat them so we got to have a good grasp on them. Okay, so how is this word pronounced? Av. That's right. The aleph is silent, short ah, short A, or ah of the comets. Beit without a dagesh is V. Okay. What does Av mean? Father. Yes. Okay, so Av is father. How about, give you a tongue twister here. This is a Chet, a Kametz, and a Gimel. Chag, yes, Chag. That's a fun one. Chag is a fun one, although there are ones that are more difficult than that. Anyone remember what Chag means? Festival, yes. Yes, Av is father, Chag is festival. Okay. How about, I don't think I went over this one, so I'll go ahead and give it to you. A Yod with a Kametz, followed by a Dalet. I don't think I gave this last week, although I think it's on your vocabulary list. How would this be pronounced? Yad. The Y of the Yod, short A of the Kametz, followed by the D of the Dalet. Okay, so Yad. Yad is a hand.
Same as Yud.
Right. Yeah, that's why the name of the letter is Yod. It comes from Yad.
Yod or Yud?
I've heard it both ways. I've heard Yod and Yud.
Yod, Yod, Yud. Same.
Yeah, technically I'm calling it Yod, but I may slip and call it Yud from time to time. But okay, so Yad is a hand. I think I did talk about this a little bit when I talked about the Yod, although I may not have written the word out. But hand
Yes, you do.
is differentiated from Kaf. Kaf is just the palm of the hand. Kind of in the idea behind Kaf is the open hand, the hand that either gives or receives. But whereas Yad is a hand in the sense of strength, the hand as a source of action. So, okay. How about Aleph, the Patach, followed by a Chet? How would this be pronounced? I'm going to bring out the Scottish in you with this one. Ach. Ach is a brother. Okay. All right, how about a Chet with a Patach followed by a Yod? How would this be pronounced?
Chai.
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 Yes. Chai does indeed mean life. And it sounds like we're pronouncing this as a long I, but in fact it's called a diphthong. It's the combination of the short A with the Y of the Yod, pronounced really quickly, I-E. Okay, so it kind of becomes I. All right, you'll see this combination frequently, although there's actually another combination I should talk about that you'll see more frequently than that. Okay. I'll go over one more word first. This is a Tate, followed by a Vav with a Cholam, followed by a Beit with no Dagesh. How would we pronounce this? The Tate makes the sound of T, right? Tov. Cholam is long O. Tov. Yes, and Tov means good. Okay? Yes, we'll be going over an intermediate. We'll be going over adjectives today, and we'll kind of learn how that functions, how you can use tov. Okay. All right. So I should cover this other aspect of the Herrick vowel, just so you know. All right. The Herrick, as I mentioned, and I'm just going to write a nonsense word up here. Okay, if we had a bait, the dagesh followed by a Herrick, we pronounce this B. Okay, because the Herrick makes the sound of short I. If we follow the Herrick vowel with a yod, then this becomes another diphthong. Okay, the short I combines with the y of the yod. And when you pronounce that quickly and run them together, it's pronounced E. Okay, so this is pronounced B. This is not a word. Okay, but Herrick followed by yod makes long E, whereas a Herrick all by itself is a short I. Okay, you will hear sometimes people pronounce a Herrick on its own as a long E, with or without a yod. I may slip and do that sometimes, but I'm not teaching it that way. If you do hear that or find that, you're not going to find words that are, have a Herrick without a yod and then a Herrick with a yod. You're not going to confuse it with another word necessarily, but as you're first learning, you might catch that discrepancy there. Now, wait a minute, that only has a Herrick and he's pronouncing it as a long E. Why is that? There's not necessarily a why is that. Sometimes it's easier to do it that way. There's certain words that are difficult to pronounce. The Herrick is a short I in because of the sounds that follow. And so I'm going to make an effort to always pronounce it as short I, but I may slip sometimes. One of those is kisei, which is a word we'll go over probably next week. Kisei is a chair. More specifically, it's a throne. But it's hard to say kisei. It's easier to say kisei. Okay, so, but it doesn't, the way it's spelled doesn't have a yod in it. It just has a Herrick, okay? So that's the one you'll probably catch me on mispronouncing. But whatever the case, the way it's taught in this course is that on its own, it's a short I. With a yod, it's a long E, okay?
See your face.
So, okay, so are there any questions about any of the material that I've covered today? Okay. Any questions off topic? Just for a few minutes?
You had discussed kind of on topic, that it became, like the Greek became the English. And as far as the information on how that progressed, where did you get that?
Oh, okay. So information on how Greek evolved into English.
How Hebrew evolved into.
There was a book that I read some time ago that kind of outlined that. I had kind of, just by looking at the forms of the letters, you can kind of deduce that without any history. There was what was that book called? I'll have to look it up. I'll send you the name of that book, though. It was real interesting, though, and it kind of went through, historically it went through scripts over time that they found and kind of showed, how the form of the letters changed. And there's not like, I don't know that it was a conscious decision, that people said, well, we're going to invent the Greek language, and to do it, we're going to borrow from this, and that's necessarily how that all happened. And I don't know that there's a record of how exactly the language began.
Okay.
But
I was thinking, when I took a world religion class in college, there were many people who started to defend Christianity and the faith and explain that it's the oldest religion, and then when you're in a class that's not, or in an institution that's not Christian, the instructors will demand that you give your information.
Right.
And that's one of my things of, okay, where does this information come from?
Right. Yeah. The historical information. There's not like you won't find a manuscript. You won't find a text that says that outlines. That says we invented the Greek language and we did it this way. You know, you're not going to find that. All of the evidence for that is sort of secondary evidence. It's just you look at, okay, this is what the Greek alphabet looks like. We know that the Greeks existed at this time. Here's what the Semitic alphabets look like, Hebrew in particular. And we know that this culture was around at this time. And wow, look at that. You know, these letters that make the same sounds are in the same order, and they look approximately the same, just some of them you have to rotate 90 or 180 degrees, you know. And, you know, I'm, not that my opinion means anything, but I'm very suspect of a lot of conclusions people draw historically, because you have to have some imagination to come up with how this, you know, became this, without any sort of source documentation of it. This I'm pretty confident in, because you can look at it yourself and go, it doesn't take a lot of imagination to see this transformation. You know, the idea that the Greeks independently, without knowing anything about the Semitic languages, invented their own alphabet, and that the letters all occurred in roughly the same order and had roughly the same appearance, you know, with some minor modifications, and made the same sounds, you know, and then, you know, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta. That's a remarkable coincidence, okay, to say the least. So I feel pretty confident in, you know, just going with the probability on that.
There's no pictograph in Greek form. There's just, it goes back to the original Hebrew pictoform that transpires the languages. Do you understand? The earliest manuscript that's ever been found in writing goes back to Hebrew, correct?
I don't know. Of any writing at all, or of
Paleo here, I mean, is that
or of the scriptures themselves?
Any writings at all where it would show that Hebrew was the original language?
Yeah, I mean, depending on what you think about dating methods, from what I understand, the earliest writings that they found were engravings in stone that were, I don't even want to say that on camera.
Okay.
I know Babylonian cuneiform writing, which is like kind of the wedge marks, you know, this kind of thing. They found those, and that, if not the oldest, those are some of the oldest writings that have been found, are these Babylonian cuneiform writings. Yeah, there are Paleo-Hebrew inscriptions that are in stone that are very old. Scrolls paper has a tendency to deteriorate over time. So, you know, the oldest, that's why there's no, you know, we don't have the Torah scroll that Moses wrote. You know, it's probably long gone. Or else it's in the ark somewhere, which is who knows where.
They treat the word as a living entity.
Right.
So it's not destroyed. It's given a proper burial.
Yes, in the Jewish scribal culture, anything that has the scriptures on it, they won't just throw it away. You know, it has to be treated with respect. So, historically, you can't find like documentation that, okay, this turned into this. All you can find is modern ideas of how things transformed one into another, and the evidence that's given is all circumstantial as opposed to direct. It's not, you know, but that's the way with most things in history, actually. You know, although it's very nice when you actually find a text that says, I was here at this time and this is what I saw. You know, this is what happened. That's, to me, the best historical evidence you can possibly have, is an actual record of someone who was there. You know, I mean, that's what we use to decide the fates of people in court, is testimonies from people who were there. So, you know, we also use forensics and things like that, but the primary thing that's relied on is eyewitness, because it has to be.
I
And
just wondered if there was, when you say this became this,
Right.
if there was any documentation.
Right.
If you go back and you try to say, okay, this is, then somebody wants to give you evidence, or wants evidence of that, and you don't have that available to them.
what I would respond to someone who asked for evidence on that front, I would respond to them by saying, okay, this is my circumstantial evidence. Okay, here's the Paleo-Hebrew alphabet, here's the Greek alphabet, here's the sounds the letters make, here's the forms the letters have, here's the names of the letters, okay? And I am saying that I believe that this language came from this language, okay, that this alphabet came from this alphabet. Your contention in academia is that all these alphabets came from an imaginary alphabet that you've never found called Indo-European. Right, this imaginary language that you've never found a document written in. Where is your evidence? And what do you have to back up that contention? This is mine. Okay.
Everybody spoke the same language to begin with, so the letters probably all have the same sounds for the most part.
Right. Yeah, and that's actually when you get into the question of the origin of all language in general, that's another very interesting question. There's actually a field of...
They came up with different forms to make the same sounds.
Right. Yeah, there's... How anybody doubts that Semitic languages are some of the earliest, if not the earliest, is beyond... I mean, many people do. Many scholars do agree that the Semitic languages were the earliest ones. But yeah, there's... For some reason, in the study of philology, study of the history of language, this Indo-European language pops up, which is entirely mythical. It's entirely, they say, well, they just kind of invent it. And it's like until they find a document written in that, it doesn't exist. But there's plenty of documents written in Paleo-Hebrew. And other sister languages like Phoenician.
Are the Dead Sea Scrolls, are they written in? I've never seen them.
The Dead Sea Scrolls, some of them are written in Paleo-Hebrew, yes. And they date back to the 1st century. So, some of them, I say some of them, it might be that all of them are written in Paleo-Hebrew, but I know that some of them are for sure. Although I haven't physically seen them, I've seen pictures of some of them, so. Although most people probably haven't physically seen them.
Yeah.
They're probably pretty well protected. I mean, one of the most important archaeological finds ever. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Well, I guess that'll wrap up the beginner class. We'll see you next week. Shalom.